A veterinarian is about to euthanize two elderly dogs, but upon returning to the cell, finds her 8-year-old son with the animals. Realizing what the dogs were doing with the child, she gets goosebumps and starts crying uncontrollably. In the heart of suburban Boston, the Oakwood Municipal Animal Shelter stands as a weathered testament to both hope and heartbreak. The aging brick building, once a beacon of second chances, now groans under the weight of overcrowding, its kennels stretched far beyond capacity. Winter's early morning light filters through clouded windows, casting long shadows across worn linoleum floors that have seen thousands of paw prints come and go. In the quietest corner of the shelter's medical wing, a distinguished golden retriever lies on a well-worn blanket, his muzzle frosted with white, eyes carrying the gentle wisdom that only comes with years. Despite his advanced age, his coat still maintains a warm honey-gold sheen, though slightly dulled by time. His tail, even in these circumstances, maintains a gentle, steady rhythm against the floor, a metronome of unwavering optimism. The shelter's atmosphere carries a heavy mix of antiseptic cleaner and the unmistakable scent of too many animals in too little space. Volunteers move hurriedly between kennels, their footsteps echoing against metal gates, while the cacophony of barks and meows creates a chaotic symphony that bounces off institutional green walls. Yet in this corner, there's an inexplicable pocket of serenity surrounding the elderly golden retriever, as if he exists in his own bubble of calm amid the storm. Through a nearby window, the Boston skyline looms in the distance, its modern towers a stark contrast to the shelter's dated interior. A no-kill shelter sign hangs precariously by one corner at the entrance, its faded letters telling a story of good intentions struggling against harsh realities. The morning's weak sunlight catches the metal nameplate on the golden retriever's temporary kennel. Max, age, senior, status, pending. The medical wing's clock ticks methodically on the wall, counting down minutes that seem to carry more weight than usual this morning. A stack of official-looking papers sits ominously on the nearby desk, their purpose clear to anyone familiar with shelter protocols: euthanasia authorization forms awaiting final signatures. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the shelter's lead veterinarian, navigates the morning chaos with practiced efficiency. At 42, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, she carries herself with the determined grace of someone who's learned to balance professional detachment with compassionate care. The dark circles under her green eyes tell a story of long nights and difficult decisions, while her white coat bears the subtle coffee stains of early morning emergencies. Today breaks her carefully maintained routine. Holding her hand is 8-year-old Tommy, her adopted son of 14 months. Small for his age, with tousled brown hair and watchful hazel eyes, he clutches a worn, stuffed elephant, his constant companion since the day Sarah brought him home from the Children's Services Center. Tommy's silence speaks volumes. His shoulders slightly hunched, his gaze fixed on the floor tiles, as if counting each step carefully. The boy's case file had warned of severe trauma-induced selective mutism. Minimal verbal interaction, the report stated. Extreme difficulty forming attachments. Sarah remembers the social worker's words. He hasn't spoken a word since the incident. Tommy's presence in the shelter this morning wasn't planned. His regular caregiver had called in sick, leaving Sarah with no alternative but to bring him to work. As they walk through the corridor, Tommy's grip on Sarah's hand tightens with each passing kennel. His other arm wraps more firmly around his stuffed elephant, pressing it close to his chest like a shield. Sarah feels the familiar ache in her heart, the one that appears whenever she witnesses her son's struggle to interact with the world around him. She's tried everything: child psychologists, play therapy, art classes. Yet Tommy remains locked in his silent world, his trauma a wall that no one has managed to scale. In the medical wing's quiet corner, Max, the elderly golden retriever, raises his head as Sarah and Tommy approach. Despite his 12 years, there's an alertness in his warm brown eyes that defies his age. His face, though grayed with time, carries an almost human-like expressiveness, particularly in the gentle tilt of his head as he observes the newcomers. The tag on his collar, worn smooth at the edges, hints at a life well lived before arriving at the shelter 3 weeks ago. The shelter staff know little about Max's previous owner, except that he was an elderly immigrant who had passed away recently. The neighbor who brought Max in had mentioned something about the owner being a retired professional, but the details were vague. What's clear is Max's impeccable training. His responses to basic commands are precise, almost choreographed, and his demeanor around humans shows years of careful socialization. Dr. James Cooper, the shelter's administrator, appears in the doorway, his tall frame casting a long shadow. At 60, with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he carries the burden of the shelter's overwhelming numbers in the slump of his shoulders. His presence this morning isn't routine. He's here to oversee the difficult decisions that come with managing an overcrowded facility. In his hands, he holds the paperwork that will determine Max's fate, his fingers unconsciously creasing the corners of the forms. The morning staff begins their usual routines around them. Emily, the young vet tech, preparing medications. Michael, the senior kennel manager, organizing the day's schedule. But there's a heaviness in their movements, an unspoken acknowledgement of what this particular morning might bring for their gentle golden resident. Sarah leads Tommy to her office, intending to settle him with his coloring books before beginning the day's difficult tasks. As they pass Max's kennel, something extraordinary happens, a moment that seems to pause time itself. Max, who had been quietly observing, suddenly sits up and makes a soft, musical humming sound, not quite a whine, not quite a bark. The noise catches Tommy's attention, and for the first time since entering the shelter, his eyes lift from the floor. Max tilts his head, then gently places his paw against the kennel gate, maintaining perfect eye contact with the boy. What happens next leaves Sarah frozen in disbelief. Tommy, her silent, withdrawn child, lets out a small giggle, a sound she hasn't heard since his adoption. The stuffed elephant, his constant shield against the world, drops forgotten to his side as he takes a tentative step toward the kennel. Max responds with extraordinary precision, lowering his body to match Tommy's height, his tail wagging in a slow, controlled rhythm. The dog's movements seem almost calculated, as if following an invisible protocol. Tommy reaches his small hand through the kennel bars, and Max gently touches it with his nose, causing another burst of laughter from the boy. Sarah's hand flies to her mouth, stifling a gasp as tears begin to well in her eyes. Behind her, Dr. Cooper stands in stunned silence, the euthanasia papers temporarily forgotten in his slack grip. In the days following the unexpected encounter, Sarah finds herself navigating a whirlwind of emotions and new routines. The scheduled euthanasia for Max is postponed indefinitely, much to Dr. Cooper's hesitant approval. 1 week, he had said, his tone a mixture of professional concern and personal hope. Let's see where this goes. Sarah's mornings now start with a detour to Max's kennel before her official rounds begin. Tommy, once reluctant to leave the house, now tugs eagerly at her hand as they enter the shelter. The transformation in her son is nothing short of miraculous. While still largely non-verbal, Tommy's entire demeanor has shifted. His eyes, once downcast and wary, now sparkle with anticipation each time they approach Max's temporary home. During these visits, Sarah observes the interactions with a mixture of maternal joy and clinical fascination. Max's behavior around Tommy is unlike anything she's seen in her years of veterinary practice. The old dog seems to instinctively understand the boy's needs, adjusting his own energy and responses to match Tommy's mood. On quieter days, Max will simply lay beside the kennel door, allowing Tommy to stroke his fur through the bars. the repetitive motion visibly calming the child. Other times, Max engages Tommy in what almost looks like structured play, pushing a ball back and forth or presenting toys in a sequence that somehow keeps the boy focused and engaged. Day 3. Tommy attempted to verbalize ball when Max nudged it towards him. Not clear speech, but a definite attempt at communication. As a mother, Sarah is overjoyed at these small but monumental steps. As a veterinarian, she's intrigued by the precision and consistency of Max's behavior. It's as if the old dog has been specifically trained for this exact scenario. But how could that be possible? The shelter staff too have noticed the change. Emily, usually rushed off her feet, now makes time to watch Tommy and Max interact, her clipboard forgotten in her hands. Michael, the typically gruff kennel manager, has taken to slipping Max extra treats, muttering something about earning his keep with a suspiciously watery glint in his eyes. As the days progress, Sarah finds herself delving deeper into Max's mysterious past. The sparse information from his intake forms nags at her professional curiosity. One evening, after Tommy has fallen asleep, a process that has become remarkably easier since Max entered their lives, Sarah pores over the dog's file. The neighbor who brought Max in, Mrs. Anderson, had mentioned the owner was some kind of retired professor or doctor. Sarah decides to give her a call, hoping for more details. Mrs. Anderson's voice crackles over the phone. "Oh, that dear man. Quiet fellow, kept to himself mostly, foreign accent, Eastern European, I think. Always had a book in his hand when I saw him walking Max." This tidbit sends Sarah down a rabbit hole of research. She finds herself staying up late, searching online for any connections between Eastern European professionals and animal-assisted therapy. The results are intriguing but inconclusive, leaving her with more questions than answers. Meanwhile, Tommy's progress continues to astound everyone around him. During a particularly memorable session, Max manages to coax Tommy into a game of fetch within the shelter's small outdoor area. Sarah watches, heart in her throat, as her son actually throws the ball, a coordinated physical act she hadn't seen him attempt before. Even more incredibly, when the ball rolls near Michael, Tommy approaches the kennel manager with tentative steps to retrieve it. Michael, usually so stoic, has to turn away to hide his emotional reaction. Dr. Cooper, witnessing these developments, pulls Sarah aside. "We need to consider next steps," he says, his tone serious but tinged with unmistakable hope. This bond between Tommy and Max, it's clearly therapeutic. Have you thought about formal adoption? The question catches Sarah off guard. She's grown so focused on Tommy's progress that she hasn't allowed herself to think long-term. The idea of bringing Max home permanently fills her with equal parts excitement and trepidation. Can she manage a senior dog alongside her demanding job and Tommy's ongoing needs? As if sensing her inner turmoil, Dr. Cooper continues, "There's a clinic in New York specializing in animal-assisted therapy for trauma survivors. I've reached out to them about our unique situation here. They're intrigued and willing to send an expert for an evaluation." Sarah nods, a mix of emotions swirling within her. The prospect of professional intervention brings both relief and a twinge of protectiveness. She's grown attached to the gentle routine they've established, wary of outside disruption. That night, as she tucks Tommy into bed, she notices a new drawing on his nightstand. In crayon strokes, Tommy has depicted himself, Sarah, and a golden figure unmistakably representing Max. It's the first time he's drawn his new family unit, and the sight of it brings tears to Sarah's eyes. As the days turn into weeks, the initial euphoria of Tommy's breakthrough begins to face real-world challenges. The shelter's resources are stretched thin, and Dr. Cooper is under increasing pressure from the board to make difficult decisions about long-term residents like Max. One morning, Sarah arrives to find a notice on her desk. The board is requesting a comprehensive report on Max's case, including a cost-benefit analysis of keeping him at the shelter. The implication is clear. If Max isn't adopted or doesn't serve a specific purpose, his future at Oakwood remains uncertain. Sarah feels the weight of this responsibility acutely. She knows that Max's presence is transforming Tommy's life, but she struggles to quantify this progress in the sterile language of reports and statistics. How does one measure the value of a child's laughter or the significance of a first voluntary hug? Meanwhile, Tommy's progress, while remarkable, isn't linear. There are still days when he retreats into himself, overwhelmed by the world around him. On one particularly difficult morning, he refuses to get out of the car at the shelter, curling into a tight ball in the back seat. Sarah, already running late for an important meeting, feels torn between her professional duties and her son's needs. It's during moments like these that Sarah questions whether she's truly equipped to handle Tommy's complex emotional needs alongside her demanding career. The guilt of these thoughts gnaws at her, especially when she sees the unconditional love and patience Max shows Tommy, even on his worst days. The pressure intensifies when Sarah receives a call from Tommy's school. His teacher, while acknowledging the recent improvements, expresses concern about Tommy's continued struggles with peer interactions and classroom participation. She suggests increasing Tommy's therapy sessions, which would mean less time at the shelter with Max. This recommendation creates a painful dilemma for Sarah. She's witnessed firsthand the positive impact of Tommy's interactions with Max, but she can't ignore the professional advice regarding her son's education and social development. The possibility of reducing Tommy's time with Max feels like a betrayal, yet she knows she must consider all aspects of her son's well-being. Adding to her stress, Sarah notices Max showing signs of his age more prominently. After particularly active sessions with Tommy, Max seems more tired than usual, taking longer to recover. Sarah's veterinary instincts kick in, and she performs a thorough checkup, discovering some minor health issues that, while not immediately serious, remind her of the challenges of caring for a senior dog. The arrival of the expert from the New York clinic brings its own set of complications. Dr. Elena Rossi, a renowned specialist in animal-assisted therapy, observes Tommy and Max with keen interest. However, her presence disrupts the comfortable routine Sarah and Tommy have established with Max. Tommy, sensing the change in dynamics, becomes more withdrawn during the sessions with Dr. Rossi present. Max, too, seems less at ease, often looking to Sarah for reassurance. Dr. Rossi's clinical approach, while professional, lacks the warmth and intuitive understanding that Sarah has developed with Max and Tommy. One afternoon, Dr. Rossi pulls Sarah aside. "Dr. Mitchell," she begins, her tone measured, "Max's techniques are remarkably advanced. It's almost as if he's been specifically trained for cases like Tommy's. Have you considered the possibility that he might have been a professional therapy dog in his previous life?" The question catches Sarah off guard. She's been so focused on the day-to-day progress that she hasn't fully explored Max's mysterious past. The idea opens up a new avenue of questions and potential complications. If Max was indeed a professional therapy dog, could there be legal or ethical implications in keeping him at a municipal shelter? Would his former owner or organization have a claim on him? Dr. Rossi's observation about Max's potential background as a professional therapy dog sets off a chain of new challenges for Sarah. Determined to uncover the truth, she begins a more thorough investigation into Max's past, a task that proves to be far more complex than anticipated. Sarah's first step is to reach out to various therapy dog organizations and training centers across the country. However, she quickly discovers that records for retired therapy dogs are often incomplete or difficult to access due to privacy concerns. Each dead end in her search brings a mixture of frustration and an odd sense of relief. Part of her fears what she might find could jeopardize Max's place in Tommy's life. As Sarah delves deeper into her investigation, she finds herself spending late nights at the shelter, poring over documents and making phone calls to contacts in the veterinary world. This increased workload starts to take a toll on her home life. Tommy, sensing his mother's distraction and increased absences, begins to show signs of regression. He becomes clingier during their time together and more resistant to going to school. One morning, as Sarah rushes to get Tommy ready for school, he has a meltdown, refusing to get dressed and repeating his first word in weeks: Max, Max, Max. The incident leaves Sarah feeling guilty and torn between her responsibilities as a mother and her determination to secure Max's future. At the shelter, new complications arise. A local news station gets wind of the miracle therapy dog story and requests to do a feature on Max and the shelter. While Dr. Cooper sees this as an opportunity for much-needed positive publicity, Sarah is hesitant. She worries about how the attention might affect Tommy's progress and fears that increased public interest could complicate Max's situation if his former owner or organization were to come forward. The pressure from the shelter's board continues to mount. They demand concrete results from Dr. Rossi's evaluation to justify keeping Max. Dr. Rossi, while impressed with Max's abilities, is bound by professional protocols that require more structured assessment over a longer period. Her request for an extended evaluation period is met with resistance from the board, who are eager for immediate solutions to their overcrowding problem. Sarah finds herself in the difficult position of mediating between the board's demands, Dr. Rossi's professional caution, and her own desire to protect the fragile progress Tommy has made. The stress begins to manifest physically. She's losing sleep, forgetting meals, and struggling to keep up with her regular veterinary duties. A particularly challenging day comes when a potential adopter expresses interest in Max. The woman, a retired teacher, seems like an ideal candidate, kind, experienced with dogs, and able to provide a loving home. Sarah knows that in any other circumstance, she would be overjoyed at this opportunity for Max. However, the thought of separating him from Tommy fills her with dread. As Sarah grapples with this ethical dilemma, she notices subtle changes in Max's behavior. The old dog seems more protective of Tommy, often positioning himself between the boy and strangers. During one of Dr. Rossi's evaluations, Max appears to deliberately showcase his more advanced skills, as if understanding the importance of the assessment. These observations lead Sarah to a startling realization. Max's behavior suggests a level of intelligence and training far beyond what she initially assumed. It's almost as if the dog is actively working to stay with Tommy, adapting his behavior to meet the challenges they face. This realization brings both hope and a new set of questions. If Max is indeed this highly trained, what circumstances led to him being abandoned at a shelter? And more importantly, what secrets from his past might still come to light? Faced with mounting pressures and the looming decision about Max's future, Sarah decides to take decisive action. She arranges a meeting with Dr. Cooper, Dr. Rossi, and key members of the shelter's board to present her case for keeping Max and potentially integrating him into a formal therapy program at the shelter. Sarah spends nights preparing a comprehensive presentation, compiling data on Tommy's progress, Max's observed skills, and research on the benefits of animal-assisted therapy. On the day of the meeting, she arrives early to the shelter, her nerves on edge, but determination strong. As the meeting begins, Sarah presents her findings with passion and professional precision. She outlines a proposal for a pilot program that would not only justify keeping Max, but could potentially transform the shelter's approach to hard-to-adopt animals. Her suggestion includes using Max as a cornerstone for a new therapy dog training program, which could help other shelter dogs and provide a valuable community service. The board members listen with interest, but their questions are tough and pragmatic. They raise concerns about liability, funding, and the practicality of implementing such a program. Dr. Cooper, while supportive, also expresses reservations about the shelter's capacity to manage such an ambitious project. Dr. Rossi, however, becomes an unexpected ally. She shares her professional observations of Max's unique abilities and the potential impact of the proposed program. Her endorsement carries significant weight given her reputation in the field. As the discussion intensifies, Sarah realizes she needs more than just clinical data to make her case. In a moment of vulnerability, she shares personal anecdotes about Tommy's transformation. His first words in months, his improved sleep patterns, his willingness to interact with others at the shelter. Her emotional testimony resonates with the board in a way that statistics alone could not. The meeting concludes without a definitive answer, but Sarah senses a shift in the room. The board agrees to consider her proposal and postpone any decisions about Max for another 2 weeks, giving her time to refine her plan. Energized by this small victory, Sarah throws herself into developing a more detailed program outline. She reaches out to local schools and therapy centers, gauging interest in potential partnerships. The response is overwhelmingly positive, with several organizations expressing eagerness to participate in a pilot program. Meanwhile, Tommy continues to make steady progress. During a visit to the shelter, he surprises everyone by approaching Dr. Cooper and asking, in a soft but clear voice, if he can show him Max's tricks. The moment is brief but powerful, leaving Dr. Cooper visibly moved and more inclined to support Sarah's efforts. As word spreads about the potential new program, shelter staff become increasingly invested in Max's story. Emily, the vet tech, volunteers her free time to help Sarah with research. Michael, the kennel manager, starts informal training sessions with some of the other dogs, inspired by the possibility of expanding their roles beyond just waiting for adoption. As Sarah's proposal gains traction, she decides to take a bold step to strengthen her case. She arranges for Tommy to visit a local elementary school with Max under Dr. Rossi's supervision to demonstrate the potential of their therapy dog program. This decision doesn't come easily. Sarah worries about exposing Tommy to a new, potentially overwhelming environment, but she also recognizes the importance of showing real-world applications of her proposal. The day of the school visit arrives, filled with nervous anticipation. To everyone's surprise, Tommy handles the new situation remarkably well. With Max by his side, he manages to interact with a small group of students, even participating in a simple reading exercise where children take turns reading to Max. The school's principal is impressed, immediately seeing the potential benefits for students with special needs or anxiety issues. This successful outing becomes a turning point. Sarah uses video footage and testimonials from the school visit to bolster her presentation to the shelter board. The real-world example proves more powerful than any hypothetical scenario she could have presented. Concurrently, Dr. Rossi's continued evaluation of Max yields intriguing results. She notes that his behavior goes beyond standard therapy dog training, displaying an almost intuitive understanding of human emotions and needs. This observation leads her to reach out to colleagues in the field, trying to trace Max's origins or find any record of such advanced training. As the deadline for the board's decision approaches, Sarah faces an unexpected challenge. A local purebred golden retriever rescue group, having heard about Max, offers to take him into their program. They argue that they have the resources to care for a senior dog and could potentially find him a loving home. This offer forces Sarah to confront the ethical implications of keeping Max at the shelter, even for a noble cause. Torn by this development, Sarah spends a sleepless night weighing her options. She realizes that her desire to keep Max close is not just about Tommy or the proposed program, but also about the deep connection she herself has formed with the gentle old dog. This self-awareness leads her to make a difficult but important decision. The next morning, Sarah revises her proposal. Instead of keeping Max permanently at the shelter, she suggests a collaborative program with the Golden Retriever Rescue. This would allow Max to stay involved with the therapy program while also being cared for by breed-specific experts. Additionally, it opens the door for involving other rescue dogs in the program, potentially helping more animals and children. This compromise seems to satisfy all parties involved. The board is impressed by Sarah's willingness to adapt and collaborate, seeing it as a sign of her commitment to the animal's best interests rather than personal attachment. As the day of the final decision approaches, there's a palpable sense of anticipation at the shelter. Staff members, who have become invested in Max's story, anxiously await news. Tommy, picking up on the atmosphere, becomes clingy, often asking to visit Max more frequently. The day of the board's final decision arrives, bringing with it a whirlwind of emotions and unexpected challenges. Sarah wakes early, her mind racing with last-minute preparations for her presentation. As she helps Tommy get ready for school, she notices his heightened anxiety, manifesting in his refusal to let go of his stuffed elephant and his insistence on wearing the same shirt he wore on his first visit to Max. Upon arriving at the shelter, Sarah is immediately confronted with a crisis. Max, usually the picture of calm, is visibly distressed. Emily, the vet tech, reports that he's been restless since the previous evening, refusing food and water. Sarah's veterinary instincts kick in, and she performs a quick examination, her heart sinking as she detects a slight fever and signs of discomfort. With the board meeting just hours away, Sarah is torn between her professional duties and her commitment to the proposal. She knows that Max's health could jeopardize everything they've worked for, but she's also acutely aware that his well-being must come first. As she begins diagnostic tests, she sends a frantic message to Dr. Cooper, requesting a delay in the meeting. Dr. Cooper's response is sympathetic but firm. The board members, some having traveled from out of town, cannot reschedule. The meeting will proceed as planned, with or without Sarah's presence. This ultimatum forces Sarah to make an agonizing choice between attending the crucial meeting and staying with Max. In the midst of this turmoil, Dr. Rossi arrives, having come early to review notes before the presentation. Seeing the situation, she offers to take over Max's care, urging Sarah to focus on the meeting. However, Sarah is hesitant to leave Max in anyone else's hands, even those of a respected colleague. As Sarah grapples with this decision, she receives another blow. The Golden Retriever Rescue Group calls, expressing second thoughts about their collaboration. They've received an influx of dogs from a recent hoarding case and are now unsure if they can commit resources to the therapy program. This development threatens to unravel a key component of Sarah's revised proposal. With time ticking away, Sarah makes a series of rapid-fire phone calls, trying to salvage the rescue group's involvement while simultaneously consulting with Dr. Rossi about Max's condition. The stress begins to take its toll, and Sarah finds herself struggling to maintain her composure. Adding to the tension, Tommy's school calls. He's become inconsolable, demanding to see Max and refusing to participate in class activities. The school requests that Sarah pick him up immediately. This new complication pushes Sarah to her breaking point. Torn between her son's immediate needs, Max's health crisis, and the career-defining meeting. In a moment of desperation, Sarah considers withdrawing her proposal altogether, feeling overwhelmed by the converging pressures. It's at this crucial moment that Dr. Cooper appears at the clinic door. Seeing the chaos unfolding, he makes an executive decision to bring the board members to the clinic instead of holding the meeting in the conference room. As board members file into the crowded clinic space, Sarah finds herself in the unprecedented position of having to present her case while simultaneously tending to a sick dog and comforting her distraught son, who has just arrived with a school administrator. The atmosphere is tense and unconventional. Board members exchange uncertain glances, clearly uncomfortable with the unorthodox setting. Sarah, still in her lab coat and visibly stressed, begins her presentation, her voice shaking slightly as she tries to articulate her vision for the program. It's at this moment, with all seems to be falling apart, that something unexpected happens. Tommy, who has been clinging to Sarah's leg, slowly approaches Max's examination table. In a voice barely above a whisper, but clear enough for everyone to hear, he says, "It's okay, Max, we're here. You're not alone." The room falls silent, all eyes on the boy and the dog. Max, responding to Tommy's presence, visibly relaxes, his tail giving a feeble wag. The genuine connection between child and animal, displayed so plainly in this moment of crisis, speaks volumes more than any prepared presentation could. The unexpected display of Tommy's progress and Max's response creates a palpable shift in the room's energy. Board members who moments ago were skeptical now lean in, intrigued by the unfolding scene. Sarah, seizing this moment of attention, begins to speak from the heart rather than from her prepared notes. She weaves together the story of Max and Tommy, highlighting not just the clinical improvements, but the profound emotional impact their bond has had. As she speaks, she continues to monitor Max's vital signs, demonstrating in real time the delicate balance of care and professional expertise required for the program she's proposing. However, the moment of connection is brief. Max's condition suddenly takes a turn for the worse, his breathing becoming labored. Sarah's professional instincts kick in, and she immediately shifts into emergency veterinary mode. She calls for Emily to bring specific medications and equipment, her voice steady but urgent. The board members watch in a mix of concern and fascination as Sarah works to stabilize Max. Her ability to remain calm under pressure while explaining her actions to Tommy, who refuses to leave Max's side, showcases exactly the kind of skills and compassion central to her proposed program. Dr. Rossi steps in to assist, and as they work together, she shares her professional observations about Max's unique abilities and the potential impact of the program. Her endorsement, delivered in this high-stakes moment, carries significant weight. Meanwhile, Dr. Cooper takes charge of managing the board members, answering their questions and providing context for what they're witnessing. He points out how this crisis exemplifies the daily challenges and opportunities present in animal rescue work. As Sarah and Dr. Rossi stabilize Max, a new complication arises. The medication administered requires follow-up care that would typically necessitate transferring Max to a better-equipped veterinary hospital. This development threatens to disrupt not only the proposal, but potentially separate Max from Tommy and the shelter indefinitely. Sarah, thinking quickly, proposes using this situation as a pilot for part of her program, establishing a partnership with a local veterinary hospital for specialized care when needed. She makes a rapid series of phone calls, leveraging her professional network to secure support for this impromptu addition to her proposal. The tension in the room reaches its peak as Sarah awaits responses from potential veterinary partners while simultaneously monitoring Max's condition and trying to calm an increasingly anxious Tommy. The board members engage in hushed discussions, their expressions a mix of concern and deliberation. In this crucial moment, Tommy surprises everyone once again. He turns to the board members and, with more words than he's spoken in months, pleads, "Please help Max. He helps me, and now he needs help." The raw emotion in his voice touches even the most stoic of the board members. As if on cue, Sarah's phone rings. A local veterinary hospital has agreed to partner with the shelter, offering their facilities and expertise for cases like Max's. This development addresses the immediate crisis and strengthens Sarah's proposal significantly. With Max's condition stabilizing and a care plan in place, Sarah takes a deep breath and faces the board. She acknowledges the unorthodox nature of the presentation they've just witnessed, but argues that it demonstrates precisely why her proposal is so vital. She emphasizes how the program could transform not just individual lives like Tommy's, but the entire approach to animal rescue and therapy in their community. The board members exchange glances, their expressions unreadable. Dr. Cooper steps forward, suggesting they take a brief recess to discuss what they've seen and heard. As the board files out of the room, Sarah is left in a moment of suspended animation, exhausted, hopeful, and terrified all at once. In the quiet aftermath, Sarah kneels beside Max's bed, where Tommy sits vigilantly holding the dog's paw. She puts her arm around her son, and for a moment, the three of them form a tableau of the very connection and healing power she's been advocating for. The sound of footsteps signals the board's return. Sarah stands, her heart pounding, ready to face whatever decision they've reached. As Dr. Cooper prepares to speak, the atmosphere in the room is charged with anticipation, the future of Max, Tommy, and Sarah's vision hanging in the balance. As the board members file back into the room, Dr. Cooper steps forward, his expression unreadable. The tension is palpable as everyone awaits the verdict. However, before he can speak, there's a commotion at the clinic's entrance. A distinguished-looking older gentleman with a slight limp and a noticeable Eastern European accent pushes his way into the already crowded space. "I believe I can provide some crucial information about this dog," he announces, his voice carrying a mix of authority and urgency. "Max was not just a pet," Dr. Novak explains, his voice thick with emotion. "He was my partner in developing groundbreaking techniques in animal-assisted therapy for trauma survivors." The revelation stuns everyone into silence. Dr. Novak goes on to explain that he was a renowned psychologist specializing in childhood trauma. Years ago, he had pioneered an innovative program using specially trained dogs to help children who had experienced severe trauma. Max, he reveals, was not just any therapy dog, but the original canine subject of his research, a dog with abilities far beyond typical service animal training. "We worked together for over a decade," Dr. Novak continues, his eyes misting over as he looks at Max. "The techniques we developed have helped countless children around the world." Dr. Novak explains that after retiring, he had moved to the United States for medical treatment, bringing Max with him. However, a series of health setbacks had left him hospitalized for an extended period. Believing he might not recover, he had made arrangements for a neighbor to find a new home for Max, never imagining the dog would end up in a shelter. "I've been searching for him ever since I was released from the hospital," Dr. Novak says, his voice breaking. "I never imagined I'd find him here, still doing the work we started together." Sarah, still reeling from the revelation, turns to Dr. Novak with a mix of awe and apprehension. "Dr. Novak," she begins hesitantly, "your work, it's the foundation of everything we've been trying to do here." The board members, who have been listening in stunned silence, begin to murmur among themselves. Dr. Cooper steps forward, addressing Dr. Novak directly. "Sir, your arrival has certainly added a new dimension to our discussions. Would you be willing to share more about your work and how it relates to what Dr. Mitchell has proposed?" Dr. Novak agrees readily, and for the next few minutes he outlines the basics of his research. He explains how Max was trained not just to provide comfort, but to actively engage in therapeutic techniques, responding to subtle cues in a child's behavior and helping to guide them through emotional healing processes. As he speaks, Sarah notices Max becoming more alert, his tail wagging gently at the sound of Dr. Novak's voice. Tommy, too, seems captivated by the older man's words, his eyes wide with interest. Amidst this discussion, Sarah finds herself facing a new emotional dilemma. While thrilled at the validation of Max's abilities and the potential for the program, she can't help but feel a pang of worry. Will Dr. Novak want to reclaim Max? What would this mean for Tommy's progress? As if reading her thoughts, Dr. Novak turns to Sarah and Tommy. "I can see the bond that has formed here," he says softly. "It's exactly what Max was trained for, what he loves to do. I wouldn't dream of separating them. Relief washes over Sarah, but it's quickly followed by a new wave of uncertainty. How would Dr. Novak's presence affect their plans? Before she can voice her concerns, Dr. Novak continues, "If you're open to it, I'd like to offer my expertise to help develop this program. Max and I may be retired, but it seems our work isn't finished yet." The offer hangs in the air, full of potential. Sarah looks around the room, seeing the excitement on Dr. Rossi's face, the thoughtful consideration of the board members, and the hopeful expression of Dr. Cooper. Her gaze finally lands on Tommy, who's looking up at her with a small, rare smile. In this moment, Sarah realizes that what started as a desperate attempt to save one dog has transformed into an opportunity to create something truly revolutionary. The twist of fate that brought Dr. Novak to them could be the key to not only securing Max's future, but also to developing a program that could help countless children and animals. Sarah takes a moment to gather her thoughts. Acutely aware of the weight of the moment, she looks around the room, making eye contact with each person present before speaking. She turns to the board members, her expression earnest. "The program I've been proposing is no longer just a hopeful experiment. With Dr. Novak's expertise and Max as a living example of its potential, we have the foundation for something truly groundbreaking." Dr. Cooper nods encouragingly, and Sarah continues, her confidence growing. "I propose we expand our original plan. We can create a comprehensive animal-assisted therapy program that not only helps children like Tommy, but also serves as a model for shelters and clinics across the country. She outlines a vision where the shelter becomes a hub for training both animals and therapists, with Dr. Novak as a key advisor. We can offer hope to traumatized children and a second chance to animals who might otherwise be overlooked," she explains, her passion evident in every word. Dr. Rossi steps forward, adding her professional endorsement. "The potential here is enormous," she states. "This could revolutionize how we approach trauma therapy, especially for children who struggle with traditional methods." As the board members begin to nod in agreement, Sarah addresses the final piece of the puzzle. She turns to Dr. Novak. "Your offer to contribute your expertise is incredibly generous. Would you be willing to work with us to develop this program, sharing your knowledge while allowing us to build upon it?" Dr. Novak's eyes light up with renewed purpose. "My dear," he says warmly, "nothing would make me happier. To see Max continuing our work, to have the chance to help more children and animals. It's more than I could have hoped for in my retirement. Ladies and gentlemen," he addresses the board, "I believe we have before us an extraordinary opportunity. Not only can we solve our immediate challenges with Max and support Tommy's remarkable progress, but we can also position our shelter at the forefront of a revolutionary approach to animal rescue and therapy." The board chair, a usually stern-faced woman, speaks up. "This is certainly more than we anticipated when we came here today. Dr. Mitchell, your dedication and adaptability in the face of today's challenges have not gone unnoticed. And Dr. Novak, your willingness to contribute your expertise adds tremendous value to this proposal." She pauses, looking thoughtfully at Max and Tommy. "I think I speak for all of us when I say that we're prepared to approve this program with some conditions. We'll need a detailed plan, budget projections, and clear milestones for evaluation." As the details are being discussed, Tommy, who has been quietly observing, suddenly speaks up. "Does this mean Max can stay?" he asks, his voice small but clear. Tommy's face breaks into a wide smile, the first genuine one Sarah has seen in months. He turns to Max, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck in a tender hug. As the meeting concludes, there's a sense of excitement and purpose in the air. What started as a crisis has transformed into an opportunity for innovation and healing. Sarah looks around at her unlikely team, her son, an elderly dog, a retired psychologist, and a group of committed professionals, feeling a surge of hope for the future they're about to build together. In the days following the pivotal meeting, the shelter buzzes with renewed energy and purpose. The emotional impact of the decision ripples through everyone involved, manifesting in various ways. For Sarah, the relief and joy are almost overwhelming. She finds herself tearing up at unexpected moments when she sees Tommy and Max playing in the shelter's yard, or when she catches Dr. Novak patiently explaining his techniques to an eager group of staff members. The weight of uncertainty that had been pressing on her for weeks has lifted, replaced by a sense of excitement and possibility. Tommy's transformation is perhaps the most striking. With the assurance that Max will remain a part of his life, he begins to open up in ways Sarah had only dreamed of. His sessions with Max, now structured and guided by Dr. Novak's expertise, yield remarkable progress. Tommy starts to speak more, not just to Max and Sarah, but to others at the shelter as well. His nightmares, once a nightly occurrence, become less frequent. One particularly poignant moment occurs when Tommy, unprompted, approaches Dr. Cooper and asks if he can help feed the other dogs. The simple request, delivered with shy determination, brings tears to the eyes of the shelter staff who witness it. It's a clear sign of Tommy's growing confidence and his desire to connect with the world around him. Dr. Novak experiences a profound sense of fulfillment. Having believed his life's work was behind him, he now finds himself reinvigorated, mentoring a new generation and seeing his research applied in ways he had never imagined. His bond with Max, renewed after their separation, adds a personal layer of joy to his professional satisfaction. The shelter staff, from Emily the vet tech to Michael the gruff kennel manager, are infused with a new sense of purpose. They throw themselves into learning about animal-assisted therapy, eager to be part of something groundbreaking. The atmosphere in the shelter shifts from one of sometimes grim determination to one of hope and innovation. Even the animals seem to pick up on the change. The dogs in the kennels appear calmer, responding to the more positive energy around them. Max, fully recovered from his health scare, carries himself with a renewed vigor, as if aware of his important role in the unfolding story. As news of the innovative program spreads, the shelter begins to receive attention from unexpected quarters. Local media outlets run feature stories, highlighting the unique collaboration between Sarah, Dr. Novak, and the shelter. These stories not only bring positive publicity, but also attract potential donors and volunteers eager to be part of this groundbreaking initiative. One particularly touching moment comes when a group of parents whose children have struggled with trauma reach out to the shelter. They share stories of their own challenges and express hope that this program might offer a new path for their families. Sarah, listening to their heartfelt words, feels a renewed sense of responsibility and determination to make the program succeed. The emotional impact extends beyond the immediate participants. Dr. Rossi, inspired by what she's witnessed, begins to incorporate elements of the program into her own practice. She reports back to Sarah about the positive responses she's seeing, further validating the approach they're developing. Perhaps the most profound emotional change is seen in Sarah herself. The experience has reignited her passion for her work in a way she hadn't anticipated. She finds herself staying up late, excitedly planning new aspects of the program and waking early, eager to implement her ideas. The balance she had struggled to find between her professional life and her role as Tommy's mother seems to have naturally fallen into place, with the two aspects of her life now beautifully intertwined. One evening, as Sarah tucks Tommy into bed, he asks her a question that catches her off guard. "Mom," he says softly, "are we superheroes now?" Puzzled, Sarah asks him what he means. Tommy explains, "We're helping people and animals like superheroes do. Max is like our super dog." Sarah's heart swells with emotion at her son's words. She realizes that through this journey, Tommy hasn't just been a recipient of help. He's begun to see himself as someone who can make a difference in the world. This shift in perspective, from feeling helpless to feeling empowered, is perhaps the most significant emotional impact of all. As she kisses Tommy goodnight and checks on Max, who's curled up at the foot of the bed, Sarah feels a profound sense of gratitude. What started as a desperate attempt to save one dog has blossomed into something that's changing countless lives, including her own, in ways she never could have imagined. 6 months after the fateful board meeting, the shelter hosts an open house to showcase the progress of their animal-assisted therapy program. The event is a testament to how far they've come and the lives they've touched along the way. The shelter's transformation is evident from the moment visitors step through the doors. Once a place of last resort for unwanted animals, it now buzzes with positive energy. The kennels have been redesigned to be more comfortable and stimulating for the animals, many of whom are now in training to become therapy dogs themselves. In the main hall, Sarah stands beside Dr. Novak, greeting guests and explaining the program. Her confidence and passion are palpable as she describes their successes and future plans. Dr. Cooper, beaming with pride, leads tours and introduces potential donors to the staff members who have been instrumental in bringing the program to life. The star attractions, however, are Max and Tommy. They demonstrate some of the techniques they perfected together, with Tommy confidently explaining to the audience how Max helps him feel safe and express his feelings. The bond between boy and dog is evident, drawing emotional responses from many observers. Throughout the event, families share stories of how the program has impacted their lives. Children who once struggled to connect with the world now interact freely with the therapy dogs and each other. Parents speak of nights without nightmares and days filled with more laughter than they'd heard in years. As the open house winds down, Sarah finds a quiet moment with Tommy and Max. She reflects on the journey that brought them to this point, the challenges they faced, the risks they took, and the unexpected allies they found along the way. What started as one woman's desperate attempt to save a dog has grown into a community-wide effort that's changing lives and challenging preconceptions about both animal rescue and trauma therapy. Looking out at the bustling shelter, now a beacon of hope and healing, Sarah feels a deep sense of fulfillment. She realizes that in saving Max, they've not only transformed Tommy's life, but have also created a ripple effect of positive change that will continue to spread far beyond the shelter's walls. As Tommy leans against her, his hand resting comfortably on Max's head, Sarah knows that their story is far from over. It's just the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope, healing, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. In the year following the launch of the animal-assisted therapy program, the impact of Sarah, Tommy, and Max's journey extends far beyond the walls of their local shelter. The success of their initiative sparks a nationwide conversation about innovative approaches to both animal rescue and childhood trauma treatment. 1. The shelter becomes a model for others across the country, with representatives from various organizations visiting to learn and implement similar programs. 2. Dr. Novak's involvement leads to a series of published studies, providing scientific validation for the program's methods and outcomes. 3. Tommy continues to make remarkable progress, eventually becoming a junior ambassador for the program, sharing his story with other children and families. 4. Max, despite his advanced age, thrives in his role, training a new generation of therapy dogs and touching countless lives. 5. Sarah is invited to speak at national conferences, sharing her experience and inspiring others in the field of veterinary medicine and animal welfare. 6. The shelter's adoption rates soar, with more people understanding the potential of rescue animals as loving companions and therapeutic partners. 7. A documentary filmmaker begins chronicling the program's journey, bringing wider attention to the cause. 8. State legislators take notice, leading to discussions about increased funding for animal-assisted therapy programs in schools and healthcare facilities. As the program's first anniversary approaches, Sarah reflects on the incredible journey that began with a simple act of compassion. What started as an effort to save one dog has blossomed into a movement that's reshaping lives, both human and animal, across the nation. 5 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, Sarah stands at the entrance of the newly expanded Oakwood Animal Therapy Center. Beside her, a teenage Tommy confidently leads tours, his voice strong and clear. Max, now elderly but still spirited, rests nearby, watching with wise eyes as a new generation of therapy dogs trains with their human partners. Dr. Novak's legacy lives on through the center's innovative programs, touching lives across the country. As Sarah watches families arrive, hope in their eyes, she knows that their journey of healing and connection is far from over. It's a continuing story of compassion, resilience, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. Inspired by Sarah, Tommy, and Max's transformative journey, you too can make a difference in the lives of both animals and people in need. Consider volunteering at your local animal shelter or supporting animal-assisted therapy programs in your community. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change lives. Whether it's fostering a rescue animal, donating to shelters, or simply sharing this story with others, you can be part of this heartwarming movement. Remember, sometimes saving one life can lead to saving many more. Together, we can create a world where every animal and every person has a chance at healing and happiness.